This is one of 4 screen doors that I made about 2 years ago. I've got it back to repair the finish. The finish on the bottom's flaking off real bad. I think that's just my fault mainly. I don't think I got enough of the sealer and the top coat on the bottom of the door when I was spraying it, just because it was at the bottom of, close to the ground. I'm also going to replace the raised panels. So I've already replaced them once, and the first time I made them out of solid wood, and I had a feeling that they might bow, but I thought maybe since it was just a screen porch that it would be okay. It wasn't. They bowed almost immediately. So I made new ones, which is the one you see now, and that is a 1/2 inch piece of MDF with a mahogany border, and then the veneer is epoxied onto that on both sides, and it lasted a few months and then it bowed. And so I'm going to do away with the raised panels because I don't think it's a good the doors get hit by the afternoon sun pretty hard year round, and it's just not a good spot for a raised panel door. If it was an entry door, it would be 2 inches thick, and so there would be more I could do, and I could make the raised panel work. But being as it's a screen door, it's only 1 3/8. I just don't have enough thickness to be able to do what I would normally do for an entry door so that the panel doesn't bow. So I'm going to do away with the raised panel and make a louvered insert with a screen on the back side to replace it. So this is what the raised panel looks like that's in the door now. It's just a 1/2 inch piece of MDF with a mahogany border, and there's like a tenon, or almost like a biscuit, I guess, that runs the entire perimeter of it. There's a slot cut in this and a slot cut in this, and it sits inside the two to help tie the two together to give it make it more rigid. And then I vacuum bagged about 3/8 thick mahogany veneer on top of it, and then the panel's raised on both sides, but it didn't last and it's still warped, so we're gonna fix it. This is the raised panel up close, and it's hard to tell how bad the panel's bowed, but I can stick my finger in there almost. So that'll kind of give you an idea of how bad the panel is bowing. The finish is also peeling off, but some of that is probably because I didn't get a good amount of finish on the edges. Hard edges don't hold finish well. So I'm going to take some sandpaper and just kind of round it over a little bit, kind of, I guess, burnish it, you could say. And we'll sand it all down and then restain and refinish them. This is the other one that goes with it. You can see the finish doesn't look good. Already got the raised panel out of this one, and you can see the veneers are, the finish is popping at the seam of the veneer. It's because it's bowing. These two pieces are moving and it caused the finish to crack. So them just getting hit by the sun so hard is just not a good spot for a raised panel. You can see this side is fine. This is the interior side. So the sun does its number. So this is the raised panel that I'm going to take out. It's got this profile right here. That is all one piece. This is cut into it. So this piece will stay, but the raised panel is going to come out. You can see there where it's bowed. And once I get the raised panel out, I'm going to use a flush trim router bit to cut this off, and then I'll be left with just a rectangular opening that I will make the louvered kind of insert to sit inside of it. So these are just tacked on with a 23 gauge pin nailer, and they're also siliconed in a few places to help hold them. So they stick on reasonably well. They're easy to get off because the silicone on the panel is what's really holding it in place. And these don't come out easy. You have to beat them out, pry them out. So since I'm going to be cutting the profile off, I'm going to pry against it. So this part right here is going to get cut off so I can pry against it to try and get the panel to drop out. But it usually doesn't come out easy. They're in there pretty good. And it's just silicone really that's holding it. But if you use 100% silicone, you gotta try pretty hard just to get it out. So this is what it looks like now that I've trimmed that profile, this piece right here. I've flush trimmed it. And so now I've cut it all off all the way around. And that is where my louvered panel, if you will sit. I've got some African mahogany 4/4 shorts. They're about 1.1 right now. I'm going to joint a face and an edge. And then I'm going to take them to the bandsaw, and I'm hoping that I can get 2 pieces out of each one, because I want to resaw these into 3/8, a little over 3/8, because that's how wide my slat is going to be, is 3/8. And I'm sizing it at 3/8 because I'm going to use a 3/8 router bit to cut the mortise to receive the slat. So I'm hoping that these are flat enough that after I join them on one side, I can still resaw them and get 2 pieces that are 3/8 of an inch thick. So just have to see, that's the plan. I've got a face and an edge jointed. While I was doing it, I got to thinking about it, and I went ahead and I jointed both sides, which you normally wouldn't do, but these 2 faces don't relate to one another because I'm going to be resawing. I'm going to be cutting it in half, so I can put this side against the fence, and I can rotate it, put this side against the fence, and then I'm left with 2 pieces that are hopefully around 7/16 of an inch thick. And I've only got one side on each piece that needs to be ran through on the planer. I can put the jointed side face down, and I can bring it to my final thickness, because I need to sneak up on it because I want a snug fit, but you don't want the slats wobbling in place, and I don't want to glue them. I want them to just be, I wouldn't say a pressure fit. I want it to slide into the mortise, but I don't want it to be hard. I want there to be some room for expansion and contraction, but I don't want it so loose that they rattle when the door moves. And you also don't want it so tight that if the door decides it wants to push in a little bit, it's going to cause the slat to bow out because it's too tight on the ends for it to allow it to slide. Because the slat will be slightly smaller than the opening, so that the slat can move back and forth in it, but not so much that it wants to fall out one way or the other. And it can't be too tight, because then if the door compresses any, it'll cause the slat to bow out. and the slats won't be in plane and it'll look like garbage, and I'll be making another one, and I don't want to do that. These are the pieces I just resawed. This piece right here didn't do very well. It had a ton of tension in it. You can see these are the boards. They went through just like this, and it won't sit flat. That's how twisted it wants to be. So it was twisting coming out. There was a whole lot of tension on the blade. You can see, but luckily they should be thick enough. At least this one is, that I should be able to plane that out. No problem. Some of these smaller ones did just fine. This is the board exactly how it sat, ran it through like that, and resolved nicely. Same thing with another one. So now I'm going to run them through the planer to get them to a consistent thickness that I need. Then I'll rip them, and then I'll run them through the shaper to cut the round over on the edges. This is the little jig that I've made to hold these. These are going to be the frame pieces. So it'll sit up in the door, and the louvered mortise will get cut like that. So I've got these two pieces and a little stop block and a little stop block, and I'm going to use the vacuum pump to hold the spoil board down, and then I'm just going to screw this to the spoil board. The spoil board needs to be replaced anyway, so I'm not worried about putting holes in it, but it's just some scrap plywood that's basically pinching this, and it's pretty tight in there, so it'll hold it while the CNC router cuts the mortises. So right now I'm having to set the XY0 on the machine, so I'm centering up on this piece because it's slightly bigger than what I need it to be. And then I can just pull the measurement that I need from the center and cut it to the correct height for the panel. So I've got the center mark, and now I've got a sharp point tool, and I'm just moving it over to the center so that I get exactly where I want. So as you can see, the tool point is directly over that center mark, and so when I start this program that I drew in VCarve, that's where it's going to start, and everything will go left and right of it to keep all the spacing symmetric from the center. So I've got my my little side pieces cut. You can see they're a mirror image of one another. So these will be the side pieces. And now all of my slats ripped. So these are just under 3/8 thick, and they are just over 1 1/4 inches thick. So the slot is 1 1/4 inches. And these are slightly oversized because when I run them through the shaper, I've got like a bullnose cutter, a round over cutter that will take a little bit off the edge to clean up the edge, to take off any saw marks. So instead of just rounding the edge, I'm actually taking a little bit of each edge to clean it up, because there's some burnt marks on the edges. And once I get those ran through the shaper, then I can cut them to length, cut all this stuff to length, and I'm going to sand and stain and pre-finish everything, and then I'm going to assemble everything and then put it in the door. So this is the cutter that I'm using. It's just a bullnose. I think it's a 3/8 radius, and I use the power feeder to feed all of the pieces. So I just got done milling all of these pieces on the slats on the shaper. And I use the power feeder for a couple of reasons. One, because it's much safer and faster. But another reason is because the power feeder pushes down on the piece as it's passing through the cutter. And that's important because all of these dimensions have to match up. So if this piece isn't pressed down tight to the shaper table, then outside of that cutter where it's a radius, it's a square on the top and the bottom. So if the piece rides up, the roundover is no longer centered on the piece, and you're going to get a shoulder cut on the top edge. And if it's like that the whole way down, then the piece is useless. So all of this, the dimensions really become important on all of this stuff, like the diameter of the tooling and the thickness of the material. So these are just inside 3/8. It's about like 0.372 or so. And so it's just under 3/8 so that it will slide into this and not be real hard. The diameter of the router bit that we're used to cut these is also 3/8, and the radius on the roundover is 3/8. So the thickness of your slats are important. The diameter of all of your tooling has to match up. You know, if these are too thick, not only will they not go into the mortise, but then you're going to have shoulders outside of your roundover. If they're too thin, the roundover will be centered on the edge, but then you'll have shoulders. And so it's not rocket science, but it is things that are important if you want it to all go together and look good and not have to be planing slats down after you've already made them. So these are all my pieces. I've got them stained. These are the slats. These are the two louvered side pieces. And this is the top and the bottom. So right now they have 2 coats of sealer on them. And I'm going to go ahead and assemble them. And then I'll spray them with the top coat once they're all put together. The reason I'm doing that is I'm worried the slats will get too thick and too wide to go in to the mortise. And if I have to beat them in, then it'll chip the finish off and it's not going to look good. So while everything will still go together good, I'm going to assemble everything. I'm pre-sanding it too because the way that the louvers are, they're too hard to get into. So this one is a little hazy and it's because it's been sanded. I've gone back and forth on how I want to attach these together. And so it's just a butt joint like this. And I've thought about doing a domino and a screw. Then I have to worry about whatever adhesive I use, whether it's wood glue or epoxy. The working time on those aren't long enough for putting together louvers, at least not for me, because they're such a pain to put together. So what I'm doing is I'm going to screw them together, 2 stainless screws, and that joint right there, and that way I can put these 2 pieces up. I can then put all my slats in, and then I can fiddle with them to get the top piece on. And I'll clamp one side while I'm doing it, and it's worked in the past, and so that's what I'm going with.
This is the shaper cutter that I use to cut a little rabbet in the back of the louvered panel. I used it to create a little dado for the spline for the screen to fit in, and just set it to about 4.5 millimeters in depth and in height, which seems to be about the right amount for the spline to sit in snugly. So this is the screen door after I have sanded all of the old finish and stain off. I started with 40 grit and worked all the way up to 180 before I stained it again. It's got 2 coats of a sealer, exterior sealer, and 2 coats of just a clear satin top coat. Got the panel fixed in place. I did threaded inserts with bolts in the 4 corners that hold it. Now I've got the groove cut, so I'm going to attach the screen with the spline, and that section up there has a panel that also has spline that holds the screen in. But this is it after it's all pretty much finished. It's just a matter of putting the screen on, putting the hinges on. There you can see rail and style, how it goes together, or how it went together originally. But that's it, almost done. Here it is with the screen in. This is the inside of the door. And you can see the groove with the spline inside of it. I would not do it that way again, the way that I cut this, because this piece, the louvered panel, the margins have to be perfect for the spline to work out right, and it was a real big pain. So if I did it again, I wouldn't cut a dado in the edge like I did. I would cut a groove in here so that it's a consistent width. Which means I wouldn't be able to butt joint the pieces like I did. I would have to miter them. Otherwise, if I did it after the fact like I did, this groove would run all the way through, and this groove would run all the way through, so you'd see a little bit at the ends where they cross, which isn't a huge deal. But I've got the other screen panel in there as well. It has spline in it, but you just can't see it because it's from the back side. I put the screen on it and then put the panel in it, and there are screws, which that screw's missing, but there are screws that hold it in place. So that is the inside of the door, and this is the other one, and that is the outside of the door.